Good morning or good afternoon to everyone, and thank you very much for joining us, joining this FT Live event on automation and leveraging technology in the professional services. This is being done in partnership with Williams Lea, and I'd like to extend a huge welcome to all of the people who've registered. Thanks for doing that. I'm Stephen Foley. I'm the US accounting editor in charge of our professional services coverage here in New York, and we have a great panel to discuss this topic, or wide range of topics, frankly, under this banner. We have Craig Weaver, who's the managing partner for tax at Baker Tilly, Frederik Vinten, who is the chief operating officer for Europe, Middle East, and Africa at FTI Consulting, and Charles Beard, who's the COO of Guidehouse, as well as Clare Hart, who's the CEO of Williams Lea. So I'm anticipating a lively discussion in the next 50 minutes. I mean, it's an extraordinary time in the professional services and in the consulting and mid-market consulting firms in particular. We've been writing quite extensively about some of the disruptions. Obviously, there's some firms who are letting people go at the moment, but at the same time, revenues are still growing very strongly in this sector, and that's because with rapid change happening, you may not necessarily be getting the same types of business, but there are lots of disruptions amongst clients, lots of economic turmoil at the moment. So the demand for these services is extraordinary, and we're obviously coming off a period of great change as well after the pandemic and digitalization and the way we work. So I kind of want to throw open a very opening question to everyone, just to get a sense within each of your individual firms, kind of where the operating environment is at the moment, and how technology is being used to meet the challenges and the opportunities of this particular moment. And I thought I'd start with Craig, if you're available.
Sure, Stephen. Thanks. Yeah, definitely exciting times. So just from a context standpoint, Baker Tilly, we're a full service accounting firm. What I think happened, in terms of where we're at now, we knew technology was coming, and then it went into hyper mode as far as, injection of it, acceptance of it, frankly. So I took away from it a lot of positives, if you will, the broad amount of people that were now willing to accept technology because it was relatively forced upon them from a remote standpoint. But then what it really started to emphasize was standardization and process. As you can imagine, your workforce now is spread out. And so the ability to standardize, create consistent process became even more critical than it had in the past. And so that's something that I think people have embraced, understanding that element of it. And then the other piece I would add is just the elevation of expectation of in particular, the new workforce coming in out of university, their expectation of more of the redundant things being automated in their life, and they're doing more robust, gratifying work, more on a consultancy side of things.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. And Frederik, how do you see the environment?
Yeah, maybe also starting a bit on a macro level. I mean, I think professional service, the sector is kind of reaching an inflection point where, AI and new technologies really will shape and change the business model and also the operating model. Of course, it provides a lot of opportunities, but also there are a number of dilemmas we are facing. I think if we kind of zoom in on FTI and just for a very brief introduction, it's kind of a mix. It's a broad range of services from restructuring, corporate finance to forensic litigation, economic analysis, and also tech. So I would say kind of in our offering to our clients today, we've actually utilized AI and tech for many years and built that in. But of course, we're also focusing more and more on the more operational side and how to deploy these technologies to Craig's point, to drive efficiencies and drive much more automated processes as we grow across multiple markets and across different product and service offerings. So a lot of opportunity, but of course also a lot of dilemmas.
Of course, and we'll go into some of those. Charles, what's the perspective from Guidehouse, and how's tech in your day to day?
Sure. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. If you don't know Guidehouse, we're a 5-year young company. We actually started as a carve out from the U.S. PricewaterhouseCoopers business with a much more global footprint today, believe it or not. And we really serve the regulated markets in energy, financial services, health, and in the U.S. defense and security. And I think we talked about some of these macro trends that are really driving it. The first of which is the global inflationary pressures are affecting not only all of our businesses but all of our clients' businesses. And so tech can be a real advantage to them, but it comes in the regulated markets. It comes with a downside risk associated with the data protection regimens that are also being deployed at the same time. The second, we touched on it just a moment ago, the labor market has expectations of trying to get compensation to sort of deal with those global inflationary pressures. At the same time, clients want to cut their prices because they don't have the financial wherewithal to necessarily pass the cost on to their consumers when it comes to acquiring services. You also have the global realignment of economic power among the nations taking place that's leading to global supply chain disruptions for many of our clients, where tech can sort of be a part of that solution set, but it comes with its own set of challenges where you're looking at redefining those supply chains. And so I just share all that because in the middle of that, you've got this massive technical inflection. Everybody wants to work from home. We're all on business models, and I'm talking not just consulting firms, but also our clients on business models that were centered around and certainly the protection of the data centered around everybody sort of working in the office. And so while we thought the models were going to be temporary, they've been much more enduring even post-pandemic. And I think we're all trying to figure that out. So that's a bit of a witch's brew, and we're all in the business of running to the fire. And it comes with an attendant set of risk. And tech can be a big part of the solution. It can also be we also need to be very careful not to run too quickly into some of the hype cycles that are underway right now that put our client data at risk.
No, it's extremely important. We'll go through a lot of those points. Clare, what's your experience at the moment? Oh, I'm not sure I can hear you, Clare. Are you unmuted?
I am unmuted.
There you are. You are now.
Okay. I agree with Frederik about AI and technologies will reshape consulting, and actually I think it'll reshape all industries, all businesses. For Williams Lea, and for those of you who don't know who Williams Lea is, we are a global business support services firm. We focus on 3 key industries: consulting, legal, and financial services. And we provide a combination of people and technology to deliver presentation and creative services. So think of the millions of PowerPoint slides that are created as pitch books and notifying clients of progress against the consulting work that you're doing, administrative support, secretarial, document processing, marketing and sales support, and financial services support. So really business support services. So our clients in legal, consulting, and financial can focus on their strategic initiatives, and we handle the administrative support. Our priorities are people. We're a human capital business, but we're tech enabled. So one of the most important things from our perspective is reinforcing to our clients the value they're getting from Williams Lea services. So we have a platform called Engage, which is a workflow tool which provides all sorts of data security. So there's chain of custody across the whole request that's made, and a data warehouse and a reporting platform. So you can see how many people you have working for you, who's making the requests, what are the utilization rates. So this is very important, this data and reporting capability. But that's been in place for several years, and our clients expected of us that level of transparency. The new things, when we think about the new world that's very AI enabled, are changing our services. So translation and transcription, which we do today, more and more of that will be automated. Synthesis of documents and summarization will be automated. And what we're calling human in the loop, to enable our clients to move forward with their large language models and capturing the value of their internal content, but being confident that it's of quality, even for internal use. No hallucinations, just that added value service. So technology is changing our world too.
What's really interesting is all of you in different ways have kind of come back to the operational efficiency, and cost saving, frankly, when so many things are under pressure. I'd love to take a few examples of where you've had some of the biggest wins in using technology to take out cost and to improve efficiency. I mean, I think Charles, you mentioned operational efficiency most vociferously. So why don't you start? Where have you had success at Guidehouse?
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest example, to be honest, is because we're such a new company, we were able to immediately adopt an all cloud infrastructure. So we don't run a common MPLS network, for example. It's all software defined. So from an operational agility perspective, we can be in a country and out of a country, a lot faster than the lawyers can paper it, right? Now they like some of that and they don't like some of that, but you get the idea. But as a result, we've abandoned the idea of a single ERP. That's all gone, right? Now it's a federation of cloud services. So you have to get really good at that. And as Claire said, look, we're looking at AI. We've already used AI, especially sitting on top of our ServiceNow platform. So our IT service desk, we have the same number of people doing IT support today that we had when we had 5 years ago, when we had 1,500 employees, as we do today, having 15,000 employees. So that just gives you a sense of the kinds of scale you can get operationally, and we are looking at it in the context of how do we write proposals, right? Claire, you talked about it in our healthcare business where we do translation services, or in our revenue cycle business. So we are looking at those technologies, but we're trying to do it in a way that you can choose the right large language model. You know how to create the vector databases that are associated with ingesting that data, and you have to mitigate those hallucinations. And we're refining those models for our clients right now, and so they'll adopt as well. But at the same time, we're cautious of the fact that we're all living through the reality that 30 years ago we adopted the internet and we didn't think about IP-based security. And we want to and we're all living with those sins today. And we want to make sure that, we're not part of that problem for our clients for the next 20 years.
I think we're going to talk extensively, I'm sure, about the pros, the cons, the opportunities of AI in a little while, and obviously that is changing rapidly, in just sort of month by month by month. In the last few years, Craig, actually, I was thinking of you, because Guidehouse is obviously growing from a standing start, right? It was able to come up with the very latest tech. I think you described your firm as something of a quilt of legacy technologies after a lot of acquisitions, which I suspect is going to be a lot of people in the audience's experience of their own tech systems. So where have you been able to find some wins from an efficiency point of view, given that backdrop?
Yeah, just to emphasize that, in particular in the accounting industry, we've seen a lot of consolidation there, but put some context around it. In the last 3 years, I think we've done north of 20 acquisitions, combinations. And as you mentioned, you got different systems and processes. So within the tax service line, we really focused on standardization of process, and I call it system leveling. Let's get everybody onto the same systems. You need that element, if you will, to then on scale get to some level of automation. So as we've progressed in that area, identified various ways, some of the recent ones around state and local tax on the sales tax side, automating a lot of those hours. In some cases, just developing that, whether it's through an Alteryx platform or something of that nature. All of a sudden, you're taking 10,000 human labor hours out of the process. But we've seen that it's really scalable for us initially here on the compliance level. And then what that does, though, is we automate a lot of the compliance, and was mentioned by Charles, the integration of systems. As we elevate that automation on the compliance side, then it really opens up the ability for more consultative work, which I think we all view that as the human aspect majority right now. And so that while you see that automation, whether it be state income taxes, federal tax returns in this case, the opening up of labor hours, and then in particular in the accounting space, if you look at any of the research out there, we have a dip in the labor market up until I think 2025. So there's the ability to solve for that, via automation. But yeah, it's created an additional challenge for us. I think that's going to be the case with any business. How do you bring them in, get them onto your systems, and what is it that you're integrating versus converting?
I should point out to the audience that there is an opportunity to put your own questions into the Q&A box. So please do that as we talk. I'll be taking a few of those and putting them to the panelists at the end. So yeah, please do use the box to the right of your screen. It says to join in with the discussion. On the wins so far, why don't we keep on that theme? Tell me at FTI where you've been able to take out costs, free up headcount to do other things, Frederik.
So I think, as I alluded to a bit in the beginning, we predominantly deployed it kind of in the client-facing and client solutions. So where we have kind of over basically the last decade have offerings around e-discovery and so forth. So we're still in the early phase of kind of building a catalog of ideas that we are executing. We are in the middle of, I think, kind of the most advanced one is within legal, where we are running a pilot right now where we're basically applying a external AI tool where we are reviewing contracts, client contracts, and get basically within a few seconds or maybe 1 second, pinpoint to where there are some areas where our legal people need to review and come with a different view. So basically train the machine. We create a repository of our existing contracts, and then we, based on that, compare that with that, and that kind of will, just based on the pilot that we've done, I mean, will free up significant amount of time for, let me say, more value-adding work for the legal team. But we're also looking into other parts of legal, parts of finance, and also the more, you can say, HR operations, HR admin. So it's still early phase based to what you mentioned, Craig and Charles, but we can see we are building the roadmap as we speak.
I think, I mean, a number of the questions that are coming in are all on AI, and we've kept on coming back to these to these models. So let's stop ignoring the elephant in the room, and let's talk about the pros and cons of Gen AI. I know in your opening remarks, Claire, you mentioned some of those, but I mean, why don't you? I mean, tell me what your perspective of the last sort of 6 months of hype around this rollout has been. I guess it's November of last year now, so we're almost at a year of hype. Are you now into the cynical backlash phase of generative AI?
I'm actually I look at it as everybody does. It's a classic case of Amara's Law. You know, we overestimate the impact of this technology in the short term, but we underestimate it in the long run. And I actually believe that wholeheartedly, going back to Charles's example of the internet. It was the same thing. So many similarities. We have clients that say, oh, we're not allowed to use generative AI and all that. It's all going to change. We're all going to be using it. There's no question in my mind, you know, the world is going to change. So I think on the pro side, I mean, just thinking about some of the things we've done internally, we've created a bot that helps with HR onboarding and offboarding. Very important, because we don't focus a lot on internal things, but this one, there was real savings, because when we offboard someone, we immediately, you know, shut off their subscription to Salesforce, to Outlook, to Workday. So you're saving real money there. But for our clients, we introduced something called Logo Cloud in May. And this is using AI to help us get access to over 100,000 company logos, which all of our clients need access to, make sure they're the most recent, and make sure that they're the highest quality. And, when we think about the time it takes for us to put together a presentation with a lot of logos in it, it could take 20, 30 minutes per logo. With Logo Cloud, that is based on a foundation of using AI, we're able to, there's a platform they can go to get the Logo Cloud to get the logo for GSK, et cetera. So I'm really very optimistic about more products and services using AI. The cons, Stephen, just sort of to your point about the things we have to watch out for: quality. We cannot compromise quality. We've all read about hallucinations, et cetera. Regulation. We don't really know what regulation is going to be applied to artificial intelligence, generative AI technologies, and cost. I think we tend to forget it's going to cost more money because of the platform requirements, the hardware and the software. So we have to factor that into our enthusiasm about moving forward. So we all have to move forward. It's just managing that process.
In terms of the sort of the quality and the fit for purposeness of AI, I saw one of our viewers asked the question about chatbots. You mentioned that you created one for your HR. I wonder if other panelists have examples of chatbots being actually effectively used in their firms and for either for internal or external use with clients.
We've started to use it internally. It hasn't got to an external state for us, but a lot of the administrative level queries that come in, whether it be around some type of fix on a laptop, what have you. So I would say in terms of getting ourselves into that's where we've started at on an internal side, and obviously, feels much safer. And if I could just add on, I wanted to say something about what Claire said. Just in terms of AI, I'll say that people outside of the profession come to me and they'll say, "Are you worried about your, being eliminated? Like that my job is no longer going to exist?" Right? I have a total different opinion on it. I think it's a great enhancement, and I think I share Claire's excitement. I think my profession is going to be much more attractive and enhanced via the use of AI. Again, the sky is falling mentality is your entire profession is going to get eliminated. I mean, you go to a dinner party, and people will actually say that to you. "Are you worried about job security?" It's the exact opposite.
I agree.
I think maybe just building on that, I think I totally agree with what you're saying, Claire, and also Craig. I think the only thing as an industry, I think it creates more pressure on having subject matter expertise eventually, because that's gonna be the main differentiator. Because if everyone gets AI and optimized processes and what have you, then that would be the main differentiator in the market. And now we are some years ahead.
Yeah.
Tell me, at Guidehouse, Charles, are you rolling out AI in some fashion or others? I mean, I think in our discussions leading up to this, you've expressed some of the most clearly some of the concerns about data protection and others. So, I think you have a lot of sensitive clients as well, obviously at Guidehouse, given the government and sectors you work in. So, how far advanced are you? What have you done since the November rollout of generative AI? Did you catch that, Charles?
No, as soon as you started asking the question, it dropped out on me. But I think your question was, how are we doing the models? And what I would tell you, Stephen, is that we are. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we can. Yeah, and you guessed the question broadly right.
Let me do this.
Okay. All right. Maybe that's not a good sign. So. Technology.
Stephen, can I pick up on one of the questions? It's in the queue.
Yeah.
There's Charles.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, actually, since Charles is back, why don't we?
Yeah. Let's go to Charles.
Why don't we persist? Yes. Oh no.
Yeah, this has been my apologies. Yeah, what we've tried to do is figure out, quite frankly, which technology, most models, which large language models you need to use that are fit for purpose for the client problems that you're dealing with. But the others that you begin to understand is which cloud providers actually work best for those models. They don't all work elegantly for each of the cloud providers. That can become incredibly expensive when it comes to data usage and consumption, right? And when you're talking about models that are trained on one data set, and then you're trying to train them further on curated, large-scale curated data sets, that can become really, really expensive. So choosing the right model up front is really important because you can't do it multiple times.
There's actually a question from the audience, which is a good follow-up to that, which is, what are the top 3 AI services that you would recommend for professional services firms, to the extent that you've sort of reviewed the services that are out there? Which particular recommendations might you have?
Yeah, I would say that on the cloud side, what we're finding is that Microsoft is a little further along. I think because of their prior investments in large language models, and so they've got in the Azure environment, they have much more capability. That the AWS side is getting there, but tends to be much more of a build as you go model. That's when you start dealing with regulated data.
Is anyone not using Microsoft?
Staple.
Yeah.
No, they're running away with this with this at the moment. Just staying on the data protection side of things. What kind of guardrails have people put in ahead of rolling out AI tools, and what concerns have those early experimentation sort of raised? Frederik, have you been thinking about the guardrails to put around these new services?
Yeah, I mean, given the pilot was in legal, there's been quite some dialogue with legal and compliance around it naturally. But I think it's also kind of we got a lot of learnings out of that, and I think kind of as we go, we like we have many other committees and what have you. I mean, we need to have something more structured around how we drive and review options here and opportunities, leveraging the compliance and risk setup that we have today. So it's definitely something we're looking into. I don't think we've kind of found the solution yet, to be honest. But of course we need to especially as working in professional services and being advisors to our clients. I mean, we need to lead the way in this field as well. And there are many gray zones, right, and dilemmas when we go into this.
Quite a lot of this is messaging to employees as well, right? To make sure that they're not running off and experimenting with tools outside of your particular walled gardens and the like. How has it been messaging new technologies? Obviously I'm thinking AI as when I ask this question, but it is a broader question. How does one have to message new technologies to employees? Why don't you take that, Craig, and then I'll ask Claire as well.
Yeah, I was going to hit on that, Stephen. So in my opinion, is if we look. A lot of times when you have some element of data breach or security issues, it oftentimes is something that an employee innocently did. So there's really a creation of an awareness around this. And so we, relatively the way we've approached it is like all probably form some committees. We also did that by service line because the issues vary amongst our service lines. And then communicating data out, some of the basic stuff. Don't include any confidential data when if you're going to utilize, like say a chat GPT, don't put anything confidential in there. That maybe states the obvious, but oftentimes you need to hear that. And then it's a regular rollout. So like many firms, we have every other week you're getting some type of cybersecurity training. It may be a 5-minute portion but you're seeing the injection of AI into that, the training around the utilization of AI. So I think it's important to make it, if you will, part of your culture. And it's a new technology. The concept of protecting your privacy and data is not new, but as this brought up, it's a new technology. My mindset now is when anything new comes out, you have to see the advantages, but then immediately understand that there's somebody out there that's predatory in the space, and they see it as opportunistic, if you will, to penetrate through that avenue.
Does everybody have to be trained on AI? There's been these sort of extraordinary press releases from some of the big four firms saying we're buying this chunk of service from Microsoft, and we're going to train every single one of our employees on generative AI. Is that
I want to answer that.
insane?
Can I take a stab at this one, Steve?
No, okay.
I actually thought, if you had asked me that question a week ago, I would say absolutely. But in the last week, I've been in a couple conversations where, speaking about a law firm, for example, as law firms and banks and consulting firms build their large language models to enable access to historic information, so that if somebody's interested in doing work in clean energy in California, they can go into their large language model, do a search, and find out who else in the company, what other documents have been created, proposals, etc. Some people aren't going to do that. And so they're going to need someone that can go do that for them. And, whether it's the senior partner that's just not interested, doesn't have time, wants someone else to curate that for them. I think on one level, we'll all understand how to go to ChatGPT or Bard and put in a prompt and question. But I think when it comes to some of the internal implementations, there may need to be some workarounds.
I think the other, Stephen, I think there's an awareness training that everybody needs to understand. So when we talk about ChatGPT, it's a model that was largely learned on Wikipedia and books 1 and books 2. Well, that's probably not where you want to go for medical advice, right? Especially if you're a clinician, right? You probably want to use a large language model that's trained on science and biology and chemistry and outcomes and the journals of medicine, right? As opposed to crowdsource, recipes for curing gout, for example. I don't know that people understand how these tools are really trained. And so that's the awareness piece. The other, though, is practitioners, what you begin to understand is to really make the models work, it's a multidisciplinary skill. And so you need data scientists, you need engineers, you need technical people that really know how to engineer these things, because even the idea, and our young people in particular, are like, well, why can't I just go and use ChatGPT to do my meeting notes? Because the contents of that meeting is governed by a non-disclosure agreement, and you shouldn't be putting that out in the public domain. That's why. So, there's this idea that it's all simple and it's protected. It's not. And so we need to honor our commitments to our clients as well, right? So we want to adopt it, but honor our commitments to our clients as we do it.
I mean, some of these responses have made me, and indeed one of our viewers who sent in a question, think about the cost of these services, right? So they're obviously expensive to buy, even now when they're being subsidized by the big providers. But there's also the upskilling internally, and there's the education internally to factor in as well. I mean, where does the balance lie? Are we spending? Are they going to be value for money? I think is the effective question here. I mean, Frederik, how do you see the cost of these services versus the benefits of them?
No, I mean, I think based on our experience and our internal discussions, I think kind of the payoff is there. So I think it's more how we, and compared with, I mean, I'm also used to work with legacy systems and migrations and what have you, which are hugely costly compared with what we're talking about here, right? So I think that it's more a bit back to what you talked about, Charles, and you, Claire, kind of we should be aware of we are creating a new complexity if we add on a lot of different AI tools and chatbots and what have you, and what is then the underlying cost eventually, kind of when we're in a more steady state situation. I think kind of in the pilot and in kind of the early implementation phase, I think the payoff is quite clear, at least based on what we have seen. But maybe the complexity cost comes later as we go. And then, sorry, just one point around I think getting the adoption of course, there's kind of and whether we should, engage the full organization. I think there's a huge change management exercise here as well that shouldn't be neglected. And I think that's probably also why I would tend to have it a bit more narrow group in the beginning. And then as we learn from that, open up over time. And probably also in some, especially in the operational area, there will be plenty of staff that are fully occupied with just running the daily operations, right? And won't really have time to experiment and see how we can integrate with these AI offerings.
One of the questions from our audience, which I thought was interesting, we've talked a lot about AI as optimizing our own internal operational systems. Is there an opportunity from Gen AI to come up with entirely new products and services for clients as well? What are you thinking, Clare?
We've actually, this notion of human in the loop is human quality assurance, because this massive amount of data, and we're already seeing it, and in the context of companies building their large language models to make it easier for them to access internal historic information. But soon enough, that link will not only be against internal large language models, but it'll be out to external information sources and multiple external information sources, and probably not the web. It may be the web, but to Charles's point earlier, I think it'll be of higher quality. But they're still going to need help understanding and synthesizing a 127-page document. There's no way someone's going to take the time, a senior partner at a consulting firm or a law firm or a banker, to synthesize all that and read it and interpret it. So having people with those skills assist in the first round of quality assurance, that's a new service offering. Prompt engineers may be a service offering for us. We're sort of looking at it, but I think whoever does the prompt engineering is going to have a keen knowledge of the industries of their clients and how to put guardrails around the content. But I think there's more than we realize now. Those are, sort of two early thoughts that we've had on the topic.
Hey, Stephen, if I could comment on that. One of the things that I've seen over, the decades, I'll call it, a lot of times new technology comes out and it's the mega firms that, have the treasure chest to invest into that. And they really target mega clients. And so a lot of times we see this come down market where it gets cost efficiency into the middle market. So I would argue a lot of times we have a bit of a harbinger out there of what's going on at the mega level, and as it works its way down and then becomes table stakes, all the way down. And so to me, I think it's opportunistic. Are there products, new products that are going to come out? Absolutely. And a lot of it's just adapting and integrating the ability to do some of these things that technology brings. And I'll use the tax space as an example. We see one of the services that we offer now, and a lot of the large firms have been offering, is tax automation. So it's helping our clients get automated. And at a very high level, I look at the firm, and we've got to be able to handle that automation so that they're the bridge between what are the state of our client from a technology automation level and where we're at as a firm. If you're lagging, you're not going to, if you will, be able to plug into a lot of their automation. So that to me is opportunistic in terms of value-added service to provide to clients, especially in the middle market space.
And I think for us, we've done some private pilots funded by ourselves, Stephen, to educate our clients on the art of the possible. I'll give you an example. In the States, it's been global news that we've had a number of school shootings in the United States over the last decade or more. And while politicians tend to focus on the gun control aspect of it. It's just the local societies are broken. They don't have the infrastructure to sort of deal with this. So we've actually built some models that take socioeconomic data, violence data, other attributes, and brought them together and showed them that this is what's going on in society that precedes that young person thinking that violence in that way is their path forward. Well, now all of a sudden it's starting a new dialogue, and we didn't do it for money. We did it to demonstrate to them what the art of the possible was, so that they could begin to think differently about the problem statement and get left of the event. What are the interventions we need to be doing, right? In the home, in the community, in the school. What are those things that we can be doing? And so it is unlocking, I think, very much an empowering and having a social impact. And those are the kinds of things that are not, you just can't measure with a dollar sign. So those are the kinds of, we're seeing the same thing in health. When you take bioinformatics data and add it to some of this, you get all this electronic health record information. Well, how do we begin to abstract that and start looking at how do we really do disease management on a global scale at speed? The opportunities are dramatic, but we have to, Claire mentioned the word hallucinations earlier. The challenge is that what the large language models don't understand between point A and point B, they'll make up. And that's what you have to guard against, right? We have to understand that it'll answer a question, even if it really doesn't know the answer. And so we have to be incredibly careful as we take on these really important topics and apply that technology.
I know some humans who do that too. They'll answer a question when they don't know the answer. We're into the last sort of 7 or 8 minutes. So if anyone wants to add another question to the Q&A, please do that now. It's your last opportunity. There was a very interesting one about buy versus build. It was specific to AI deployment, but there is a wider question about buy versus build in tech and automation, obviously. But one of our viewers said, do you see your employees developing large language model tools using open source like Llama and LangChain, or are most successes in AI deployment coming from purchasing the existing software? Is anyone finding their employees brave enough to use open source? Go on, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a caution there to that, but I think rolled out I think 3-4 years ago in some magnitude was just the citizen developer. So one of the things that I think that you have to keep the guardrails around that, but I do think that oftentimes your employee base has some fabulous ideas. And this is really a cultivation of that. So we have something called Innovation Hub. We use Planbox or submission of ideas. And at that point, a lot of times we found that employees have done something like they've kind of tested it, if you will, on a very small scale, or they've seen it somewhere, or they see the application of something applying to another type of project or process. So I'm a fan of that. I think it's a real cultivation of innovation. It's just a matter of putting some guardrails around it.
I totally agree with Craig on that. Williams Lea, we had when the hype was really in earnest in Q1, and I was talking to employees, it became clear that a lot of the employees knew a lot more about this and what was happening, and we really should capitalize on this. So we launched a contest, Aim for the Stars. So AI Aim for the Stars, with real money, prizes at the end, so that they could look at it. So it was an educational program on one level, but it was also getting people to think about what other things can we do to improve productivity internally, but importantly, how can we drive better service to our clients? And we got close to 100 submissions, which was great. And to Craig's point, it just keeps that internal thinking about what else can we do.
Did I see Frederik put a hand up on the open source tools as well?
Yeah, so I think from our point of view, or my point of view, I think it will end being a hybrid model. But I very much believe in kind of getting the ideas from the people on ground. But I think the only thing where I'm probably looking a bit more externally, and then the right tools to actually use for the specific problems that we're trying to tackle. Because I mean, the evolution and the speed of change is so fast. So picking the winner, so to say, or picking the winners is going to be key. So I think that we still need, in terms of how we then would like to introduce it, look to the external world and not build everything ourselves.
Do you mind if I just, sorry, I know, Charles, you wanted to address that, but I wanted to get one more question from the audience in, which was how do you make sure that the automation processes based on AI are, well, the question is, are safe, secure, and effective? We've covered some of that, but also, and how do you make sure they comply with existing and upcoming regulations? And I think there's probably a second implied question, which is how do you guess what the upcoming regulations are? I mean, Charles, I think maybe you're closest to areas where
that's part of that security architecture that we talked about, right? How do you transit from your infrastructure to those tools and not expose your data, but leverage the large language model and do the compute, right? And we do that. I mean, and again, there are different cloud providers that have more elegant solutions that allow you to do that. But that's the tokenization of the data back and forth that allows you to sort of preserve the security of the data and honor the regulation. The good news is that some of the cloud providers a little further ahead in sort of memorializing that in their architectures. And that's why it's not just about the model. It's also about what is that security architecture through the cloud provider that they're going to provide natively versus what you have to do. And that's a real trick. And that's the engineering that we have to understand in order to do this safely.
And one final question, which I rather liked, which is, will AI enhance or curtail creativity?
Yes.
I think it's an enhancement. My personal opinion. I think it's going to be an enhancement. It's going to reduce a lot of the redundancy, remedial tasks. So I think that it elevates, your talent in any firm.
Totally agree.
And I think Craig, you this is where you began actually, which was talking about it's not only giving new tools and removing some of the grunt work and allowing people to be more creative. I mean, it could also be a lure into the profession, which certainly on the accounting side, on the CPA side, is struggling to attract youngsters into the profession at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's an opportunity there. I've been going at this 30 plus years, and it's hasn't been this exciting ever, I think. And people start to revisit the profession, in my opinion, because of the injection of AI and technology and automation. And as you mentioned, the services that we do today, there are a lot of additive ones, and the way we do them are quite different. So I do think it's going to be a shift in talent attraction.
Why don't I throw this last one at you, Frederik, which is, what does the consultancy business look like in 10 years?
Good question. I think a bit back to what I alluded to in the beginning, in the opening question. I mean, I think we will massively change. I think it's a bit back to kind of having expertise and subject matter expertise will be the differentiator. And I think AI will be a driving force in that.
I think that's a lovely place to end. I think we've touched on all the different aspects of this, but the kind of the core takeaway is one of optimism. This is what I'm hearing from you guys. We've obviously had quite a lot of turmoil in this sector over recent months and years, but looking forward, there are huge opportunities from all these new tools we've talked about. We've also talked about whether it's opportunities for employees to do more creative work, also for employees to build their own tools as well. What's interesting is you're all open to inputs from staff who know about this stuff, as well as making sure that it's all done within the guardrails that we've talked about. And although that implies a lot of training and a lot of preparation and a lot of extra work, I do also remember you're saying that the benefits will outweigh those extra costs as well.
Yeah.
So listen, I do like an optimistic panel. Thank you very much for a lively discussion. It's been very enjoyable, and thank you to our audience as well for some very interesting questions. We shall leave it there.
Good. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.